for the introduction. I would like to talk today on Abanindranath Tagore and on a certain aspect of his art. I hope it will be of interest to the audience over here. This is about the kind of art that he produced towards the end of his life. The title of the talk is Abanindranath Tagore's Found Wood Relatives, Narration, Nomadic Subjectivity, and Transsubjectivity in Multimedia Rituals of Destitution and Restitution. Can I share my screen, Dr. Singh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you. I will just get the PowerPoint. Okay, very good. So this is a picture of Abanindranath Tagore towards the end of his life. Of course, he was quite a changeling in the sense that every photograph of his looks very different. And this is one particular period of his life when he kept a beard. Most of the others don't have a beard, but this is an interesting picture of the period when he was creating these items that I'm talking about. In 1938, Abanindranath Tagore's elder brother, Gaganendranath, died after 8 years of paralysis. In 1941, his uncle, Rabindranath, followed. Later that year, Abanindranath moved from his ancestral home, 5 Dwarkanath Tagore Lane, to a rented mansion, Gupto Nibash, in Boranagar, Kolkata. That same year, shortly after his move, his wife Suhasini Devi, his life companion for 53 years, passed away. And in a couple of years, in 1943, the house of the Jorashako Thakurs was sold away. These changes represented an end of an era for Abanindranath, the crumbling of a communitarian manifestation related to the forces of history. It could be considered the end of what flowered as the Bengal Renaissance in regional and national history, and the end of a feudal aristocracy with the advent of the Second World War. It presaged the arrival of a new phase of modernity, that of capitalist individualism and the politics of nation states. Post-colonial nationalism may largely be thought to replicate the humanist image of the cogito, that is, the human as independent rational subject, albeit in an ethnocentric flavor. I have argued elsewhere that Abanindranath's cultural nationalism proposed an alternate dialogic idea of the nation, one in which the senses were delinked from the cogito and put into historical dialogue with one another. We see this from the very start in the calligraphic intertextuality of his Krishna Leela paintings. So this is an example of one of the Krishna Leela paintings, which were really his point of departure at the end of the 19th century. And this particular painting is called No Bihar. And you can see the title actually on top. He has written it there in Bengali. And then about half the painting is text and half of it is the painting. So the intertextuality of this painting, which is the point I'm making about the delinking of the senses, is that you have to look at the painting and you also have to read. And as you're reading, this is it looks like, you see, the visual register, the writing looks like Nastaliq Persian calligraphy or Urdu calligraphy, but actually it is in Bengali. The different paintings are actually by different poets. Some of them are by Joydev, others by other Bengali Vaishnav Padokartas. This one is Gyandev. And you see, so he explains it over there. The interesting aspect of this is that this mixing of fonts and language, some of them are in Sanskrit, puts us into an entire tradition, a historical tradition of this kind of painting. So this is the intertextuality. You are being made to engage with the historicity of this kind of tradition by the intertextuality. In his later paintings, such as the Arabian Nights series of the early 1930s, this is an example of that. Again, you see that there is the Nastaliq calligraphy on top. This is a scene where Scheherazade is convincing her father to marry her to the king. And the calligraphy here is in Urdu, and it is a street Urdu from Kolkata, where these texts were actually circulating among popular Muslim population. Or we go further. This is in the 1930s, and then we go further uh, to just a little bit before this period that he has moved to Baranagar, where he's writing folk plays. So his collaged manuscripts of plays such as Kuddur Jatra, this is a manuscript, and as you can see, he is cutting and pasting various modern commercial and information advertisements, etc., into these texts. And in places where, if you read the text and look at the image, they make a kind of interesting sense. You're pushed into a sort of historicity, comparative historicity through this effect. His collaged manuscripts of plays such as Kuddur Jatra, this historical phenomenology is inscribed into the contemporary and the local. So you see, there is a certain kind of a way in which these legendary texts, these ancient texts, are being made to come into the modern and to the local. It should be noted that many of these texts, along with the dialogue of image and text, also reference the performative. All three works mentioned above, for example, are of this kind. The Krishna Leela paintings are each inscribed with titles and texts taken from books of Palakirtan. That's what I was showing you on top. The titles are actually not just titles of the paintings, they are specific titles that are taken from volumes of Palakirtan. So it's almost a conventional title. If you look at that title and look at the painting, it immediately, in a way, evokes the kind of kirtan that used to be done on that subject. Then the other one as well, as you saw, the Arabian Nights, the inscriptions are specifically taken from storytelling traditions, Urdu popular storytelling traditions. And this Khuddur Jatra is a manuscript for a play, so that in a way this is meant to be enacted. And at the same time, the manuscript itself provides cues on what to bring into the action. Um, if somebody could please monitor the speaker, keep mute the people who have their mics on, that will be very nice. Thank you. Can somebody mute the people who have their mics on?
Is Akashdeep please mute the people who has mics.
Yes, I am looking who are unmuted.
The
Yes, sir, please
Arabian Nights
continue.
paintings, thank you. The Arabian Nights paintings are storytelling episodes inscribed with popular Urdu narrations, and the jatras are meant to be enacted. Three media, image, text, and performance, are thus engaged over a temporality that overcodes the present with the unfinished virtual memory of history. These are clearly cultural practices of postmodernism. However, even these practices appeal to an individual subject, though complicated with respect to rational agency and historical temporality. In the last phase of his life in Gupto Nibash, Abanindranath seemed to find himself in a personal and historical landscape of destitution, a loss of context and consequent loss of text and loss of subject. You see, once the context is lost, the text is lost, and even grammatically, the subject is lost, and ontologically too, the subject in a way has no place. He had few, if any, companions from the past and experienced increasingly a sense of utilitarian abjection, the uselessness of waste. In his writings of this late period, we find him frequently using the words phala, meaning discarded, and phaltu, meaning without utility. As if in a materialization of his subjective condition, shortly before his departure from Jorashako, a little female street urchin walked uninvited into his darkened and mostly empty second floor quarters. He welcomed her and gave her the name Hala. After moving to Boranogor, he retired his brush and spent part of the morning walking around the rented house, picking up natural and human debris or discards. He brought these to his room and spent a good deal of time inspecting them and working on them with small tools and touches of color. However, the finished products of these manipulations did not wear the looks of easily recognizable objects. Crafted from objects of nature or human artifacts that had lost their social coding, they were seldom returned to the world of existing codes and contexts. Instead, they retained their liminal ambiguity as objects of potentia waiting to be born. Like them, the artist too, his coding erased in an alienated world, waited in latency for conditions of individuation. Such conditions were always unexpected and unpredictable, and always temporary. And the individuations or heities these conditions called forth always new and always temporal. They most often included the arrival of children, such as Phala or other little people, into his world. To such arrivals, Abanindranath often introduced these objects, sometimes calling them Katum Kutum and sometimes Kutum Katam. Kart translates as wood and Kutum as relative, but Katam bears also the connotations of kata or cut, as well as katamo, frame or type. Thus, relatives in wood, crafted wood relatives, or relative typologies. To these human friends or relatives, he would introduce his wooden relatives with typal names given in performative improvisations of fictioning, in which temporal ontologies involving himself, the object, and the addressee would manifest as states of aspiration or darshan. The performance over, the object, the addressee, and himself would lose their names and return to a state of potentia, awaiting new conditions for collective individuation. Rani Chando A young girl, an intimate of the family, has written a book on such objects and provided some images and descriptions of the performances in which Abanindranath mobilized them. Here, for example, is a description of her first encounter related to these relations in wood. I'm quoting from her account. Abanindranath said, "I have captured a stork today." A twinkle of laughter in his eyes, he said, "What a beautiful stork." The smile now touched his lips. He said, "Both wings outspread, he is flying an endless journey." Abanindranath stops a while and starts again. He is journeying in the blue sky. Over sun-dazzled cornfields he is journeying. All alone he is journeying. Laughter lights once more his face. "You'll see." Abanindranath makes to lift his right hand from where it lies on his lap and retracts his gesture. Again lifted, again put back. In that raising of an arm as though the magic of stork revelation is hidden, such his pretense. Abanindranath's hand makes minor movements and I become anxious with expectancy. Abanindranath casts a surreptitious glance into the front pocket of his Punjabi and lifting a somber head raises his gaze to the sky. But for me, I have clearly understood that in that front pocket is the mysterious stork that is flying in the blue sky and forever flying. I am agitated with curiosity. Moving his hand casually towards his front pocket, Abanindranath says, "Oh, so you'll see, you'll see." His hand gradually proceeding towards the pocket. "Okay, then let's show you." And once more he withdraws his hand. "No, Baba, let it be," he says, expressing raptness through both his eyes. Oh, what glory of those ears of corn in the morning sunlight, and how beautiful his call as he flies. "I'll show you, shall I show it to you?" So saying, Abanindranath in one moment in reality produces from his pocket a box. A square, flat, thin, black and white cigarette box with black stripes prevalent in those days, packing inside 10 cigarettes side by side. With the closed box in his hands, he begins smiling. "Shall I open it?" he says. "But if it flies off? Well, all right, let's open it. Caution, don't speak. It will be upset if it hears humans. See, I hope there is no one else around. The thing is not for all to see." So saying, resting the box on the flat of his left palm, "Okay, let's open it then." So, with great trepidation, he opens the lid with his right hand. He says, "Now see." A tiny stork chipped out of wood, strung on fine wire, its two ends fixed to the two ends of the box. At the center, the tiny stork on the shiny tin plate, as though against an infinite sky, he is flying alone, spreading his two wings on two sides. Abanindranath holds his left hand, which has the box with the stork, a little higher. Hear how it calls as it flies. Saying this, he begins to undulate his hand very slowly. The knots of the wire, when rocked, touching the body of the tin plate, set off a sweetly stirring reverberation. "Caw, caw." Abanindranath says, "Did you hear?" And here, see how the cornfield shimmers in the sunlight. The ears of corn sway in the breeze. On the shining tin plate, the play of light and shade has made to appear paddy fields, vast stretches, infinite horizons. In that tiny black and white box, making the stork fly through the finite and the infinite, Abanindranath laughs, and I laugh. Unquote. To theorize this activity in terms of cultural production, one needs to note the inadequacy of categorizing it either as found wood sculpture abstract expression, or performative art. The first two are static objects of display and aesthetic consumption. Even if they are forms of restitution, they code the uncoded or recode the decoded, returning the object to the humanist ontology of independent subjecthood of which it was a discard. Here instead, outside the performance, the object loses its code once more, returning to the state of destitution. The third, performative art, is mostly a critical intervention which belongs equally to the humanist ontology of independent subjects. It is only certain forms of performative art, those of participatory fictioning, that open up a genre to which these object performances of Abanindranath are more appropriate. As visual creations, these objects are potential in relation, forming abstract typologies that expressed singular qualia under specific spatio-temporal conditions. Instead of seeking a new coded subjecthood in a new humanist ontology, Abanindranath, through these practices, held out a nomadic refusal of code, a retention of imperceptibility, waiting for local and temporal conditions for creative performances of collective individuation with the cultural discards of diasporic scattering. Such nomadic individuations hold the signal for a post-human polity of creative anarchy. However, lacking an intuition of the typologies formed by the related potentia, and hence the performances giving them singularity and individuation, they return to being discards. This is what has happened, in fact, to most remaining examples of Abanindranath's found wood relatives. Names unknown, locked in glass cabinets in museums, they have returned to the uncoded imperceptibility and destitution from which they came. I end with a few examples of Katum Kutum from Rani Chando's book. So here are a few of the images to which we have names because Rani Chando was given these objects and actually after the performances, and she noted down the names. So this one is a crocodile. This one is a cricket. This is a dog. This is a horse. This one is called Bhoirobi. Here is an actual photograph of his uncle Rabindranath in a characteristic pose. And I'm showing this there are many photographs like this in profile where he's standing with his hands behind him with a little slouch. And this is a little wooden thing called Robika, Uncle Rabindranath, in that same posture. And this one is called Robika in a boat. Thank you.